Have you ever wanted to make a load of bees? Maybe you want to throw food at your opponent, or maybe use some spare pocket change as a distraction, making people fear the flying coins and metal shrapnel whilst you enact your master plan. You blow up the world, but explain to our hero, don't be silly, New York was blown up 30 minutes ago. All this and more can be yours if you embrace Jaheira, friend of the forest, and her background, her upbringing as a street urchin, a pickpocket, and general naughty girl on the streets of Daramar. In today's video, I'm going to show you a casual, sort of untuned version of Jaheira, Friend of the Forest, with the street urchin as a background, a red-green tokens deck that is secretly a burn deck. But the reason it's untuned is because I've not bothered to tune it because I like playing it the way it is. It's a bit more chaotic, it's a bit more rough around the edges, and that's pretty fun. You may have seen this deck recently on Shuffle Up and Play that I played with the prof. The deck is a lot of fun. And towards the end of the video, I'll give you some ideas for side grades and upgrades too, if you want to change the direction slightly or play a more powered up version. If I'm looking hot and sweaty as I talk to camera, it's because the temperature in the UK is absurd and we have no aircon. Hence the big fucking fan I can't have on when I'm recording audio. So sit down, grab a nice ice cold drink. Fuck, I could do with some ice cold drink right now. Put your feet up and enjoy as we discuss Jaheira, Friend of the Forest. But before we get into it, don't forget this video is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com. Use the link in the description below to get 5% off your order. You can buy singles or sealed product. Cards for this deck, for example, all available in the link in the description below. Let's talk about our commander. Jaheira is a 3-mana human elf druid who is of 2 power and 3 toughness, and she says that tokens you control have tap to add green. She turns all of your tokens into mana rocks. She turns all of them into mox emeralds. She also says choose a background, and our background for today is Street Urchin, a 2-mana red enchantment, it's legendary of course, that says commander creatures you own have 1 mana, sacrifice another creature or artifact to deal 1 damage to any target. Jaheira is going to allow us and enable us to make a hell of a lot of mana. There is a bit of a treasure problem in Magic and Commander at the moment, and Jaheira exacerbates that a little bit, or at least she shines a light upon it, a lens through which to view the current landscape of Magic the Gathering. When you make a treasure, a food, or a clue, these tokens do not have summoning sickness and can be tapped for green mana. I mean, we are going to make bees and plants and wolves and all sorts of shit as well, bananas perhaps, but the main thing is the treasures don't have summoning sickness. We can always tap them. This is going to allow us to do things that will burn our opponents and kill them, and also cast X spells. I love a big old X spell. The deck aims to be flashy, but the background gives us a backup. If we can't do flashy things, we can get down and dirty. Street Urchin allows every single token you make to tap for 1 mana to be thrown at an opponent, whether it be a food, a banana, a bee, a treasure, a wolf, or anything else that this deck makes, because I can't remember all the tokens it makes. You can then throw them at your opponent for the low cost of 1 mana, and the token itself will generate that mana by being tappable thanks to Jaheira. Our deck may make tokens, but it will rarely ever swing with those tokens. Going to combat is for losers, unless we have Blade of Cells attached to our Goldspan Dragon, then we're definitely going to combat. So first up, let's talk about the best token generator in the game, or at least in our deck. It's the Hornet Nest. Hornet Nest is a 3-mana insect, it's a 0/2, it has defender, so it's never attacking, and when it's dealt damage, you create that many 1/1 green insect tokens with flying and death touch. I know the insects aren't technically bees, they are literally insects, and they're probably more close to the hornets, as the card's called Hornet Nest, but I don't give a fuck. These are bees. Bees! The way in which we're going to make a load of fucking bees is by casting spells that do a lot of fucking damage to our creatures. Star of Extinction does 20, Blasphemous Act does 13, Chain of Reaction will do a minimum 9 in most board states. Geostimulating Inferno might in some circumstances kill 1 player and shoot your Hornet's Nest and shoot something else. And Comet Storm's another way to dump a load of damage onto Hornet Nest. There are situations where you might throw 1 treasure at the Hornet's Nest per person's turn to make a bee, or with a doubler, 2 bees, to be or not to be. That is the Hornet Nest question. But the real damage enabler here is a lowly Volcano Hellion, a card that is slept on in Commander because it's only good when playing Hornet Nest. It's a 6/5 for 4 mana that is a Hellion, and it has an Echo cost where X is your life total. Echo means you have to pay it again the second time after it's come in. It's probably not going to be relevant because you just let it sacrifice and die. When Volcano Hellion comes into play, it deals an amount of damage of your choice to you and target creature. That damage can't be prevented. In essence, you are paying life to create damage that can then be converted into bees via the Hornet's Nest. You are performing alchemy using your own blood to make bees, except with less digital errata and taking away cards without giving you wild cards back. That's a very topical Magic joke right there. We looked to enable this combo through a little bit of tutoring and card draw in order to find it, but I purposely didn't put Finale of Devastation, Green Sun Zenith, or Tooth and Nail into the deck to lessen the consistency of what the deck does. I like games to play differently each time. I like games to be a puzzle and a challenge, and of course tune decks are that in playing into your opponent's stuff, but if you're playing at lower power levels, it's better to allow your game plan to be part of that puzzle as well, instead of just like rushing towards the tutor to win the game. So no, playing more tutors will make your deck more powerful and more consistent. That's the case for all commander decks, especially for this one where I'm playing some really silly combos. And then we've got the other B-list token generators that need very little explanation, but I'll mention them. Avenger of Zendikar, Jolene the Plunder Queen, Kiba Uktabi Prince, who gives bananas to people, Togo the Goblin Water Weaponsmith, and of course, a fan favourite of mine, Tireless Tracker, because I love making land drops and being able to draw cards off of it. These are all very straightforward and don't need much explanation. They make tokens and then you can double them. I do want to have a little special highlight for Zvela. Zvela Ice Shaper, who not only provides you with Icy Manalith mana rocks to tap for mana early in the game that can then be doubled or tripled or whatever, but those manaliths provide that really important early game red pit mana, but they also allow you to dump 8 mana into her and cast a spell from the top 4 cards of your library without paying for it. This gives us some much needed card advantage, some much needed digging, and a way just to dump our mana into something, because sometimes you have a lot of mana and nothing to do with it. And this deck makes a lot of mana. Brass's Bounty is a known entity, and Bootlegger's Stash was talked about to no end during previews. I hyped it up and it ended up being nowhere near as good as I thought it would be. However, this deck thrives upon this card because of the way it plays into doublers and treasures being permanent mana for our commander. Both of these are insane alike because Jaheira makes every single land into our Mox Emerald. Don't forget that. Descent into Avernus lowers life totals, speeds up games, and makes treasures. In essence, it does everything I ever want to do in a game of Commander. More people should play Descent into Avernus, and they should put it on fucking Magic the Gathering Online. Lastly, I want to talk about Academy Manufacturer, who every time you make a treasure, clue, or food, makes all 3, which is obviously incredibly powerful with all the cards I just mentioned that make clues, treasures, and foods. It's very, very good. And everybody knows this, but the card that I think is slept on a little bit, and I've seen people actually raise an eyebrow when I've cast it, is Fey Offering. It allows you to make tokens just for playing the game, and allows you to make 3 mana off of your commander because each one of the tokens it makes taps for green. That means it makes essentially a Black Lotus's worth of mana every time you trigger it with your commander in play. And with the Manufacturer, you get 9 of the tokens, which is pretty fucking gas. If you have a doubling season in play, you get 18 tokens. Yes. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the dirty little goblin nibbling on your arsehole. It's the Dockside Extortionist. I think Dockside is really not great for the game. I think it costs too much right now, needs to be reprinted into the dirt to get that to not be the case, and then probably, if I'm honest, might need a ban. At the point that it's very cheap, it's in every single red deck. There's no deck that doesn't want to play this, because Dockside is just that good. It is an aura included in every single red deck, and I won't hear otherwise. It pushes strong decks to be nuts, and enables weaker decks to catch up, but then fall behind the stronger decks that are also playing it. Either way, it's a means to an end in this deck. It's a playable game piece that is not currently banned and enables the fun that this deck wants to do. But if you really dislike the feel of this card and the games in which it resolves, I would just opt not to play it. I am playing it because, well, it's there. And other people are playing it. God, Dockside's so fucking stupid. So we make tokens. The obvious inclusions here would be doubling Season and Primal Vigor to allow us to make twice as many tokens each time we do some obnoxious shit with tokens. Just remember that Primal Vigor gives your opponent more tokens too. So if you activate Uktabi, the Monkey King, you'll give 2 bananas to each opponent, and that then powers up your ability to make tokens with Dockside. A little bit of synergy there. Second Harvest is a temporary one-shot instant speed impression of a doubling season that sometimes just serves as a type of ritual when storming off into a silly win condition in a turn. And then we have all the damage dealers that are in essence our secret burn tech. Impact Tremors, Perforos, God of the Forge, and Warstorm Surge all damage people as our creatures into the battlefield, namely our bees. And whilst that's our silly mean bit, honestly, most of your wins will come from Ingenious Artillerist, because we make so many treasures, food, and clues, and fucking manaliths, and bananas and shit. This card will trigger a lot and ping all your opponents. And an Aether Grid is another card that allows us to tap those artifacts and generate damage in like the end step before we untap, without having to sack them off to our background. It gives us more reach for that burn strat. Goblin Bombardment is a better version of our background for our creatures, but most importantly, it cannot throw pocket change or food at people, and still gives us access to an emergency firing of bees and plants for 0 mana. But bear in mind, it's strictly better with creatures, but worse because it can't fire artifacts. And then we come to a pet card of mine again, a card that is slept upon heavily. I don't just mean in this deck, I mean most green decks and any deck that generates a decent amount of tokens. Evolutionary Leap is a card that is very slept on in Commander. In essence, essence, it allows you to tap a creature token and sack them off to go digging for your next creature. And I realise that you don't have to tap the creature for the cost of Evolutionary Leap. What I'm saying is the creature will generate green mana when tapped thanks to Jaheira, so every single token will pay for itself to sack it off to allow you to go and randomly draw one of your many creatures from the deck. This gives us a bit of card advantage, but a randomised card advantage, so it's less than a tutor. Think of it like the fixed survival of the fittest, but where survival is good at like reanimating stuff and discarding things from hand, obviously that's what it does. This is much better with tokens in play. I honestly don't understand how this card is so cheap. Why is no one playing Evolutionary Leap? And let's talk about some other tech real quick before we get to our true synergies. Tech that is basically just good fucking cards that are fun. Etali, Primal Conqueror, is not an unknown entity. It's just the most fun you can have by tapping 7 red or green mana at a commander table that won't get you banned from your local game store. Or maybe it will if they're a bunch of salty cunts. The Infect back end is a thing, but ultimately I never really use it. It's just the front end is a fun way to, dump a load of mana and do some loud, obnoxious, and rather splashy things. And that's what this deck is. It's my personality. It's loud, obnoxious. Nobody likes me. That's not true. People love this deck. Kogla and Yadaro is also some newer tech from the same period as Atali, of course, the same set, but less discussed than Atali. I think it's a weird creature command in a way. It's sick. It has 3 modes. It has a 7/7 hasty trample mode that will sometimes shoot people for 7 off of Warstorm Surge. Sometimes it's a 7/7 that enters the battlefield with removal for a creature attached to it, and other times, most often, it's the 4 mana mode where we blow up an artifact or enchantment, shuffle it back into our deck, and draw a card. In essence, you're never a card down. You always get the body plus the effect, or you get the card draw plus the effect. I think it's a neat little, powerful, interesting card that is in a middling power level and is a reasonable include of most red-green commander decks. Kogla and Yadaro is not breaking any CDH tournaments anytime soon, though. And then we come to the meat and potatoes, the other way in which we win, the other way in which we laugh maniacally as our opponents realize what's going on. Stuffydol and Wrathful Red Dragon, which would probably be a Brash Taunter, but there's a discussion to be had there, I guess. These allow us to cast our big damagey splash spells like Blasphemous Act, Chain Reaction, and Star of Extinction, and shoot a lot of damage into our opponents. Originally I was playing damage doublers alongside these, but I'll come to that more in a moment. We get value out of them not just in creating bees and raffling our opponents' boards, but also doing damage to our opponents, which is real value. Decreasing your opponent's life total lower and lower towards oblivion is value. It is good. Some other fun parts of the deck that you might miss is Elixir and Tuk Tuk Rubble Fort. Both of these cards allow you to have your creatures to have haste. So your wolves, your plant tokens, your bees, or whatever the fuck you're making will tap for green on the turn they come in, and allow you to have much more explosive turns with Jaheira. The deck is a really fun take on aggressive and painful group burn decks that you often see in red or red-black, and it's kind of unique in red-green in terms of being a token deck that does this with big mana, so you can play big splashy X spells and burn people with it. But there are side grades and of like where you can focus and upgrades too. Firstly, you can lean heavier into X spells. Originally I was playing more chaotic effects like Genesis Hydra and Genesis Wave as X spells, but I cut them eventually. You can use them to get huge value off your mana, and Green Sun's Twilight exists in the deck still as a way to do that. It's with a cantrip and a big X spell like Mana Dump, but I moved more towards damage centric spells in my version of this deck. You can also push the Stuffydol angle by adding damage doublers. One single Dictator of the Twin Gods doubles the damage to Stuffydol, and then Stuffydol does double damage again when triggering to hurt your opponent, meaning you get 4 times the damage, meaning a lowly Blasphemous Act is just 52 motherfucking damage. Boom. Headshot. And then we have power level upgrades, of course, where we push the consistency, the mana, and the interaction. For consistency, there's tutors that I mentioned earlier. Things that can go grab both Nest and Hellion, or Hellion and Perforos when you need to. That's Tooth and Nail, for example. Tooth and Nail is essentially a big mana wombo combo, win the game once you got the mana for it, and it's in hand. Mana-wise, the deck produces a lot already, but you could always push it further by being faster, by the inclusion of obvious insane upgrades like Mana Crypt and Gaia's Cradle. But also appreciate that those cards are pretty pricey upgrades. Beyond that, the deck often can deal with people's boards and creatures via the damage it produces, via firing things at people, death touching bees. Don't death touch because the damage is done by the commander technically, but either way you could fire them at people, but it doesn't deal with other opponents so well outside of like Kogla. I think more interaction is good, Chaos Warp being a fun one if you don't want to push the power level too high, but if you want to get into efficiency's sake, Nature's Claim, Force of Vigor, and Beseiju are all obvious upgrades that allow you to blow up problem permanents when the table doesn't allow you to goldfish out your win con. And then we have ways to protect yourself as well, because you are in essence a burn or combo deck to an extent. Heroic Intervention is a very obvious include, or perhaps the CDH staple of Veil of Summer if you are really pushing towards the more low-cost interaction. But again, sometimes you don't need to tune a deck to an insane power level to have fun with it. I've been enjoying this deck in its untuned, unrefined form because it feels like a chaotic pile of bees. and I love that. I hope you've enjoyed the deck tech. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you are building or have played or are planning to build because of this video or shuffle up and play. I would love it if we can get Jaheira to be more popular because I think the commander is a lot of fun and a rather unique green commander too. Thanks for watching. Smash that like button. Don't forget to comment and subscribe and all that shit. I mean it, by the way. People aren't subscribing at the moment. I get quite a lot of views and the subscription rate is just low. Come on, smash that subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.